Hello, I am doctoral student Patterson, and today I will be discussing the academic ripple effect of undiagnosed dyslexia. Dyslexia is often viewed simply as reading difficulty, but when it goes unidentified, its effects can extend throughout a student's educational journey. This presentation will explore how undiagnosed dyslexia can influence academic development across childhood, adolescence, and emerging adulthood. I'll also discuss how repeated academic failures can lead to the emotional consequences, including frustration, anxiety, avoidance, and decreased confidence. Using developmental theory and original research, I will examine how learning environments, expectations, identifying practices, and access to support can shape a student's academic path. I chose this topic because my connection to undiagnosed dyslexia is personal. I spent many years academically behind my peers because the support I needed wasn't provided. Even though I generally loved learning, school personnel described me as lazy or not capable and even eventually encouraged me to drop out. One administrator even told me that DIS meant not and lexic meant see, so because I could see, I couldn't be dyslexic. My family and I had to fight for accommodations and my right to receive equal education. Despite these barriers, I continued my education, graduated cum laude, and achieved more academically than the people who underestimated me believed was possible. My experience shows why academic identification matters. A student should never have to spend more years proving that they are capable before receiving the tools and educational access that they need to actually succeed. With that in mind, I'll begin explaining what dyslexia actually is and why recognizing it matters. Dyslexia is a language based learning disorder that can interfere with accurate and fluent word recognition, decoding, spelling, reading, and language tasks. It primarily affects how written language is processed, not a person's intelligence or ability to understand ideas. A student with dyslexia may have strong reasoning, creativity, vocabulary, and comprehension while still struggling to read words automatically or express knowledge in writing. This matters academically because reading in written language provides access to nearly every subject. When these tasks require excessive effort, the student has fewer mental resources available for comprehension, organization, and responding. Dyslexia is also lifelong, although its effects can look different across childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. The central issue is not whether a student can learn. The issue is whether dyslexia is accurately recognized and whether the learning environment provides instruction, accommodations, and tools that give students equal access to learning. Dyslexia can remain undiagnosed for several reasons. Students with strong intelligence, curiosity, or verbal skills may understand the material well enough to compensate for their reading and writing difficulties. They may memorize words, work much longer than their classmates, rely heavily on context, or develop strategies that help them maintain acceptable grades. Because they appear to be succeeding, the amount of effort required goes unnoticed. Dyslexia may also be missed when performance is inconsistent. A student might participate well in classroom discussions, but struggle with written assignments or timed tests. Without accurate understanding of dyslexia, these differences may be blamed on carelessness, lack of effort, or motivation. Common misconceptions, such as believing dyslexia only involves reversing letters or visual problems, can also delay identification. Recognizing the cause allows educators to separate the learning barrier from intelligence and provide targeted support before academic difficulties continue compounding. The primary focus of this presentation is academic development. Dyslexia can affect how students progress in reading and writing, how accurately their academic performance reflects their knowledge, and how independently they manage schoolwork. When dyslexia remains unidentified, students may experience repeated difficulty while the workload, timed assignments, and expectations continue increasing. They may require accommodations or different instructional approaches, but receive more practice criticism or pressure instead. Over time, these academic experiences can create emotional consequences, including frustration, anxiety, avoidance, lower academic confidence, and fear of failure. Emotional development isn't the main focus that's being examined, but these feelings are important because they can feed back into learning. A student who becomes anxious or expects failure may participate less, avoid challenging assignments, or even stop asking for help. Therefore, academic development remains at the center, while emotional effects are considered increasing byproducts of continued academic barriers. The developmental roadmap shows how academic effects of dyslexia can change across three stages. During childhood, children are developing foundational language memory, reading, and writing skills. When dyslexia is unidentified, early difficulties can create frustration and begin affecting confidence. During early adolescence, academic demands can become more complex. Students must manage longer assignments, abstract material organization, and time assignments. Many begin compensating by working longer or developing strategies that hide how much effort learning requires. By emerging adulthood, students are expected to manage college, training, and employment more independently. Success may depend on recognizing their needs, requesting accommodations, using assistive technology, and developing self advocacy skills. The challenge may look different in each stage, but the effects can accumulate over time. The Bronfenwitter's ecological systems theory explains that development is influenced by the different environments surrounding a person. For a student with undiagnosed dyslexia, the micronism includes daily interactions with family members, teachers, classmates, in the classroom environment. The Museo system involves communication between those settings, such as whether parents, teachers, and support professionals share concerns and work together. The ecosystem includes school resources, testing practices, and access to disability services, even though the student may not control these decisions directly. The macro system includes educational policies, dyslexia laws, and broader cultural beliefs about intelligence, effort, and disability. Finally, the colonial system explains how these experiences accumulate over time. Supportive systems can improve access and confidence, while repeated barriers can allow academic difficulties to compound. When dyslexia is missed, the difficulty is not created by the student alone. It is shaped by how the system surrounds that student's respond. During childhood, dyslexia often becomes noticeable when children begin receiving formal instruction in reading and writing. A child may understand stories in classroom discussions, but still find decoding words, recognizing spelling patterns, or reading fluently slow and effortful. Because these skills don't become automatic as quickly, the child must use much more mental energy simply identifying the words. This leaves fewer cognitive resources available for understanding the material, organizing ideas, or writing a response. Writing assignments may also take much longer, even when the child understands the subject. Timed or reading heavy classroom activities can therefore underestimate what the child actually knows. Without identification, teachers mistake these difficulties for carelessness, poor effort, or low ability. These early academic experiences are important because they begin shaping the child's progress and confidence. During adolescence, students become much more aware of how their performance compares with their peers. A student with undiagnosed dyslexia may notice that classmates finish reading and writing assignments much faster, even when they understand the material well. Without an explanation for these differences, The student may begin believing that the difficulty is caused by low intelligence, poor effort, or simply being a bad student. Over time, these negative messages can become part of the student's identity and lead to anxiety, embarrassment, avoidance, fear of failure, and exhaustion. These emotional consequences can then feed back into academic development. A student who expects to fail may participate less, avoid difficult assignments, and stop asking for help altogether. This limits opportunities to practice, receive support, and demonstrate knowledge. The emotional effects don't replace the academic problem, but become another barrier that makes academic success increasingly difficult. During adulthood, academic success requires much greater independence. College students are often expected to manage reading, research, writing, deadlines, and exams at the same time, usually with less direct support than they received in high school. For students with undiagnosed dyslexia, this increased responsibility can expose academic difficulties they previously managed through extra effort and compensation. Students must first recognize what challenges may be connected to dyslexia and then learn how to communicate those needs. Requesting accommodation often requires documentation and self advocacy through disability services. Helpful support may include extended testing time, text to speech, note taking assistance, reduced distracted testing, and access to materials in alternative formats. Emerging adulthood could expose academic gaps, but can also be the stage when students finally gain the language, strategies, and confidence needed to advocate for themselves. The research shows how early identification, expectations, and educational practices can shape a student's academic development. In one study of 128 school children, 10.9% met the screening criteria for dyslexia, showing how easily students can remain unidentified without proper screening. Another study followed 170 adolescents, including 45 with dyslexia, and found connections between dyslexia, academic achievement, and educational expectations. It also showed that parents' expectations can influence what adolescents believe they are capable of achieving. A third study surveyed 274 dyslexia professionals and found considerable differences in how dyslexia was defined and assessed. Misconceptions about dyslexia also remain common. Together, these findings shows that a student's academic path is influenced by more than dyslexia itself. Academic difficulty and emotional strain can develop into a continuing cycle. It may begin with the difficulty reading, writing, spelling, or understanding written instructions. Because these tasks require more effort, students often work more slowly, need additional time, and feel as though deadlines are consistently getting closer. This pressure can lead to stress, self doubt, and decreasing confidence. Eventually, voiding or delaying assignments may feel safer than risking another failure, while continued effort can also create mental and physical exhaustion. As students become more discouraged, they may participate less in class, turn in work late, and stop asking for assistance or disengage completely. These behaviors reduce opportunities to learn and practice, which can cause academic gaps to grow even wider. Emotional consequences are not separate from the academic problem. Once they enter this cycle, they make persistent participation in academic performance increasingly difficult. Before identification, a student's difficulties may be blamed on poor effort, carelessness, or lack of motivation. Support may be inconsistent or mismatched, and the student may not understand why school requires so much more effort from them compared to their classmates. Identification provides an explanation for the pattern of difficulty and creates a foundation for targeted instruction and appropriate accommodations. It also helps separate academic barriers from intelligence or ability. After support is introduced, students can begin using strategies that are more intentional and effective, such as assistive technology, extended time, accessible materials, and structured approaches to assignments. Their performance can then provide a more accurate picture of what they know and understand. Experiencing success can also improve confidence, motivation, and willingness to participate. Effective support for dyslexia requires more than a single accommodation. Instruction should be explicit, structured, and matched to the student's individual learning needs. Systematic reading and spelling instruction, guided practice, clear organization, modeling, and graphic organizers can strengthen academic skills. Accommodations can also include extended time, text to speech, audiobooks, speech to text, type to oral responses, and reduced distracted testing. These supports don't lower academic expectations, they reduce the barriers that interfere with students demonstrating their knowledge. The academic environment is equally important. Students must understand dyslexia accurately, maintain high expectations, communicate with families and support professionals, and encourage students to develop self advocacy skills. Progress should be monitored so support can be adjusted over time. The overall goal is equal access to the same learning opportunities. When the barriers are removed and people's strengths are supported, academic performance can more accurately reflect a student's true knowledge, effort, and ability. To conclude, undiagnosed dyslexia can create an academic ripple effect that begins in childhood and continues through emerging adulthood. The difficulty is not lack of intelligence, motivation, or potential. Instead, barriers involving reading, writing, identification, and access can prevent students from demonstrating what they truly know. When those barriers continue, frustration, anxiety, avoidance, and lower confidence can become part of the academic struggle. However, that path can be redirected. Early identification, appropriate instruction, accommodations, supportive expectations, and self advocacy can provide students with equal access to learning. Dyslexia doesn't have to define a person's ability or determine their future. When understanding and the right support, students with dyslexia can demonstrate their strengths, rebuild their confidence, and reach their full potential. Thank you for watching.